Welcome to the Planning Board, City of Littleton. I'd like to get started tonight. We'll start with a roll call.
Board Member Bartline. Board Member Bolt.
Here.
Board Member DeZan.
Here.
Board Member Elrod.
Here.
Board Member Graham.
Here.
Board Member Moore.
Here.
Board Member Rudnicki.
Here.
And Board Member Samuelson.
Here.
Thank you. All right, we'll start out with the approval of the January 24th minutes. Has everybody had a chance to look at those? Do a motion?
So moved. Second.
Board Member Rudnicki made a motion, and Board Member Graham second. I got to turn the thing on. Okay, the minutes pass. Move on to scheduled and unscheduled events. We don't have any scheduled presentations, but are there any? Is there anyone from the public who'd like to address the board on a subject not related to the hearing tonight? Now is your time to speak. Okay, we'll move on. So our first item of business is the Littleton Village Plan Development Plan Amendment and Rezoning at 7400 South Broadway. We'll start with staff presenting their report, and then we'll follow that with the applicant. And while that's happening, if anybody is wanting to speak during the public comment, you need to sign up in the back if you haven't done that already. Thank you.
Good evening, Planning Board. I'll be making the presentation tonight. This is Andrea Minma's case, and she's here tonight to help answer questions. I would first of all like to start off with giving you the list of exhibits, which include the public hearing rosters, the proof of postings, and the proof of publications.
Thank you. Someone down here.
Tonight, the applicant, WIP Littleton Village LLC, has submitted an application to amend the Littleton Village Plan Development Plan and change and realign the boundary line between the two parcels, the PDR parcel and the PDC parcel. They have approved this amendment would maintain the total development caps on the property while reconfiguring the streets and the land use parcels. The property is located, as you know, at 7400 South Broadway. It's at the northeast corner of the intersection of Broadway and East Dry Creek Road. It's about 77 acres. It's surrounded by Centennial, City of Centennial on the north and east sides, and by the City of Littleton on the west and south sides. The City Council approved the Littleton Village PD in March 2006 on the 77 acres. It was approved for mixed-use development on the westerly, 33.67 acres for a total of 250,000 square feet of commercial with 412 units in that mixed-use area. The east half of the property, about 43.48 acres, was zoned for residential use only, and that was a total of 488 units with a total of 900 dwelling units on the property. The mixed-use area was proposed to have a Main Street commercial area, and I will go on a little bit further there on that. This shows the parcel layout on the original approval. As you see, the Main Street was a diagonal that came off of Fremont and then came down here to Dry Creek with a traffic circle. Parcels A and B were strictly just commercial development uses with, oops, that's sensitive. Oops, yeah. The west side of A and B was just commercial. This area here that's IH, J, G, and F, IH, G, and F was also commercial with mixed use with retail like on the first floor and residential on the second floor. And then as you got further to the east here, this area here, the J1, J2, also was residential, multifamily residential. The 3A and 3B is the Central Park. And then the remaining of this was all the PD, all residential over here. This was an illustrative plan of the 2006 approval to kind of show you an idea of what the rooftops would look like, and the buffering and the open space that was proposed in 2006 and approved, and that basically is still the same. They are not proposing any changes to that north boundary buffering or any changes to the east parcel with this proposal. In 2006, that approval was based on changed conditions in the area, consistency with the comp plan, the South Neighborhood Plan, the Broadway Corridor Plan, and the criteria for PD plans that is cited in City Code Sections 10.2, 23A, and B. The first part of this proposal deals with realigning the zone boundary line between tracts I and 2. Tract 1 and 2. Tract 1 is the PDC, as you can see here. Tract 2 is the PDR. Now this rather curved line here, as you can see, represents the current zone boundary district, which is somewhat kind of odd. This developer has requesting to basically straighten that out, making it a perpendicular line, which will assist them in being able to, finance and develop this property a little easier, given the problem they had with the current zone boundary would be splitting through parcels and possibly buildings and all, and this just wasn't working for them. So they've proposed a fairly small rezone here of about 7.7 acres, changing this shaded area from PDR to PDC. This basically, I'll show it here. This kind of roughly shows the current existing zone line on the illustrative plan from 2006. So basically what's happening is the PDC area will now be getting this portion of Central Park included in their zone district. They'll also, the buffer up here will also be included in the PDC district now instead of the PDR district. So that just basically, that's why the open space in the commercial district is increased. The other thing is J1 and J2, these two parcels are multifamily residential, and now they'll be located in the PDC area instead of the regular PDR area. So, just basically the line out there is changing, the actual the uses and the open space and everything that's on this original plan is really not changing. It's just, it will still look the same. It's just that line will be straight instead of in its present configuration. So the realignment just results in moving 7.7 acres from the PDR Tract 2 to PDC Tract 1. It moves the 2 multifamily parcels in the PDR, J1 and J2, to Tract 1. It results in increasing the density in Tract 1, but decreasing the density in Tract 2. And it moves the east half of Central Park and the north buffer from Tract 2 to Tract 1, resulting in an increase in open space in Tract 1 and a decrease in Tract 2. This is the proposed parcel configuration with the amendment. It basically takes the main street that was set at a diagonal, brings it in off of Broadway perpendicularly straight through to the project going east and west, meeting through like a main street, a few blocks of Main Street development in this front area here, then ending here at 3, which is the new location for Central Park and configuration. A and B would still maintain the commercial uses. H and G, as you see, would be the mixed-use area where there would be commercial and some residential allowed. And then J and F on the east side here would be just strictly residential development. This is a color schematic of their illustrative plan that was in their packet, which basically shows what I described. It's the main street going east and west. Those pink buildings represent just total only commercial uses allowed. It comes to this area here in the center, which is the mixed-use area, and this represents an inline retail shopping building arrangement. There could be some mixed use on top of that. These 2 buildings here could also be mixed use as well, like with office on the bottom, residential on the top. And then the 2 orange areas are G and F, which are proposed as just residential. This is different for Tract I. Tract 1, initially did not have just solely residential use in it. Now it is proposing that with these 2 areas. Tract J up here is the densities proposed to be capped at 150 units, and the density down on Tract Parcel F is capped at 250 units. The 2006 approval did, like I said, it approved 412 units on the westerly tract, the commercial area, and approved 488 on the residential area, Tract 2, for a total cap of 900 units. Now, this proposed amendment allows some flexibility, anticipating future transfers of density from Tract 2. And the 2006 PD plan and our current city code does allow density transfers to be approved administratively. On the 2006 plan, there are some restrictions on the east side of the property, basically not allowing density to come off of the commercial area further into the east to the residential area near the residence in Centennial, but it does allow the 2006 plan does allow transfers to the west from the east, and also allows transfers within the west parcel. This proposal is anticipating some future transfers of density from Tract 2, so it's proposing a total density unit cap on Tract 1 as 600, with a total cap of 400 on Tract 2. However, whatever combination that would be accomplished with those 2 tracts, they could not exceed a total of 900 altogether. And I know that looks a little confusing because 600 and 400 add up to 1,000. But what the applicants' proposals to give themselves some flexibility. So in other words, if they did build 600 units on Tract 1, then that would limit Tract 2 to 300, and that just gives them a little higher cap to deal with on Tract 1. But it doesn't. It won't. Under no circumstance can they exceed the 900 on the total 77 acres. And actually, I think the applicant can probably explain that proposal a little bit better than I can, because I personally was a little confused about it too at the beginning. There are a couple of proposals with this plan that result in lesser impacts to the surrounding neighborhood. The 2006 plan had no density cap on Tract 1 parcels. And on this plan, they're proposing a maximum cap of 250 on parcel F and a maximum cap of 150 on parcel J, which is the parcel that's right adjacent to the Centennial neighborhood on the north. Also, the 2006 plan had a maximum height limit on parcel J1, which is this multifamily residential parcel next to the Centennial neighborhood. That maximum height was 75 feet. The maximum height this applicant is proposing with the amendment on this parcel is 55 feet. So it's bringing the building down in height that's next to the adjoining Centennial neighborhood. The parcel F height was 100 feet on the 2006 plan, and they're bringing that maximum height down to 75 feet. And this is the multifamily parcel that would be right adjacent to Dry Creek Road. Now, the policies that the council and planning board look at in relating to this plan are the same as what was considered under the original approval. You still will be using the citywide goals and the South Neighborhood Plan from the comp plan and the Broadway Corridor Study. Those were the two comp plan tools that were criteria that was used to evaluate the 2006 plan, and it's the same criteria used to evaluate the amendment. Also, the intent statements for the PD district, which are listed in your staff report, also come into play in evaluating this proposal. And I also, in the staff report, included the staff's response to the various different, the 6 intent statements for the PD plan. The positive changes from the previous plan is well, I just want to step back a little bit. The staff does recommend approval of this. We find that it does meet the goals and policies of the comp plan and the South Neighborhood Plan and the corridor study as it did before in 2006. There are no changes of uses. The mixed-use concept is still in place, and they're not proposing any increases in the overall density and commercial density as well. In addition, staff recommends approval of this because the positive changes from this previous approved plan is that it is creating a more saleable retail area while maintaining the mixed use aspects of the proposal and the development. Another positive change is just what I said before. It reduces the height on a couple of the plan areas and caps the density on the residential parcels that are closest to the adjoining neighborhood in the Tract 1 commercial area. And with that, staff recommends approval, and I will be happy to answer questions. Andrea Minmal, the senior planner here, can answer them probably better than I because she's the one who's actually evaluated and reviewed this proposal. And we have our applicant here tonight that has a presentation for you as well.
Thank you. Let's hear from the applicant. Very powerful microphone. And then we'll do the questions for both, and then we'll do the public comment.
Here.
Okay, you're smarter than I know how to put it on full screen.
I couldn't get the full screen.
What? There.
Yeah, hold a second. So this is,
Oh, yeah, okay.
Thank you very much for allowing us to present our application. My name is Jim McGinn, and I'm with the Watt Companies. I'd like to introduce the team that I am with. The first one is Jen McElroy, who is also with Watt, and she'll be presenting a good part of the presentation. She's really in charge of the project. From Brownstein, Hyatt, Farber, and Schreck, we have Nicole Adman and Blair Daniels. They've helped us with the land use plan and interfacing with the staff. We have a gentleman by the name of Gardner Hammond, who is our feet on the ground. He has helped us with much of the cost information. He's obviously from Denver, and in a number of other capacities. We have Christopher Kenton from SEM Architects. We have Jamie Overgaard from the Lund Partnership, which civil engineers can answer questions there. And I'm not sure, Charles Buck, Charles there, he will help us with, who has helped us with the traffic study and is available for answering questions there. One gentleman that is also part of a team, but because he's involved in the development of the for-sale residential, it's a gentleman named Ted Cox, who is not here because it's we're not asking for any change there, but Ted has been with the Watt organization for many years, but moved his family out here, and we do residential partnerships with him in Colorado Springs. Tonight we'll talk about the sponsor, about Watt, give you a little background on them, the evolution of the project from the time we got involved in it, which was approximately September of last year. Talk a little bit about the products, retail, multifamily, and then go into traffic and drainage and any questions we might have in those areas or you may have in that area. A little bit of Watt history and how it pertains to this development. Watt Companies is a 60-year-old company headquartered in Santa Monica, California. And it was founded in 1947 by Ray Watt. And Ray was very active with the company until he passed away 2 years ago. Actually, it was 2 years ago, July 6th. And he really got started in building homes for returning veterans after the World War II, and then grew into single-family residential and then into commercial. The company, I've been with the company for 27 years. And the company is a private company. It's owned by 100% by the Watt family. Nadine Watt, the granddaughter of Ray, is now the president of the company. Her father is the chairman, and they are the ones that manage the property, the company on behalf of the family ownership. If you look at our commercial background and mixed-use background, there's some numbers here. It's we've developed about 10 million square feet of commercial properties in all of the product groups, commercial, industrial, apartments, retail, office buildings. And over the 60 years, we've also had about 100,000 residential units, mostly in the Southern California area. But I'll tell you a little bit about what we've done in Denver as well. Excuse me. What's appropriate for why we're interested in this project is that we've done 6 master plan developments in the past. Some are similar to this, others are not. But I think it's important to understand what we bring to this property. This property is a comprehensive, integrated, mixed-use property. And as such, each of the parts are important to support not only the community, but the success of each one of the parts. And we'll get into that a little bit later. But one of the things that we have found in other projects that we've done, for instance, one in San Diego about 20 years ago, it was a mixed use. We had apartments, we had for sale, and they wanted a village concept. But because of the lay of land, the village concept, the retail was too far away. It was about a mile away. And you can say, well, a mile away, it's not going to really be integrated into the project. Well, it wasn't, and it failed. Another project we did was Fairbanks Ranch in San Diego County also. There, we were able to integrate the village in closer to about 800 units of residential and apartments. And even though it didn't have a standard retail neighborhood community, it was a village concept. It struggled, but because it was closer and embedded in the project, it was successful eventually, but it took about 10 years. We've done another project for the city of Brea in the Ray development area where we actually had all the elements together. We had a grocery store, a drugstore, a couple of soft good users. We were able to put an entertainment or a village concept behind the retail, and then adjacent to that we did our residential, and that was a very successful project. What attracted us to this project here in Littleton is you have the same opportunity. You're able to take those elements and really create an integrated project. And it's for that reason that we were attracted to this project and think it can be successful. We also have been involved in home building in the Denver area and Colorado Springs. In two forms, we had a subsidiary here called Watt Residential in the 80s that built housing. We got out of the market when the market started to turn in the late 80s, early 90s, pretty much across the country. We re-entered it when the market started to pick up with a company called John Lang Homes. And John Lang Homes had divisions here as well as in Colorado Springs, and was involved in several projects, including the Stapleton project. This is an opportunity for us not only to do this project, but to get a presence back into this marketplace. So that's one of the reasons that we feel that this is a good opportunity for Watt and why we're here tonight. I'm going to turn it over to Jen McElroy, who will take us through the evolution of the project.
So I'm going to try not be too redundant. Jan did a great job of walking through how we got to, or some of the changes that were made from the 2006 plan. So in short, in walking you through the evolution, our main objective was really to improve upon the existing plan and to make it more economically viable. And in order to achieve that, basically required to simplify the plan, consolidate some parcels, and to square off the site. That included eliminating the diagonal Main Street and creating more of a perpendicular orientation, which you'll see on the following slide, which includes the proposed conceptual site plan, which shows the consolidation of certain parcels, the pushing of the retail closer to Broadway, and allowing for better visibility into the commercial mixed-use component, which allows for better marketability and better ability to also populate those retail spaces, which was a concern under the original plan. Additionally, we've consolidated parcels 3A and 3B into a central park, which now is situated at the highest point of the site, which allows us to take advantage of certain view corridors, which we've preserved, and also create a more logical community gathering place. Again, also the new organization of the site has allowed for a more simple, it's visually more easier to understand. And I think also once you're on the site as a pedestrian or a visitor coming off of Broadway, you have better access to the various uses. You have better visibility through the site to the central park, and also from the central park to other areas of the site. So we just think it's a more logical orientation in general without having that diagonal street crossing through the parcel. So before I talk about the differences in our plan, I'll highlight again the consistency with the 2006 plan. We haven't made any traffic impacts or increased any of the impacts to the original approval, which is due to the fact that we've maintained the total cap on the residential unit count. We've preserved the view corridor concept, which I'll get into a little later. Again, we've kept the maximum residential unit count at 900 units and haven't increased the commercial square footage, which remains at a maximum of 250,000 square feet. We've preserved the walkable Main Street concept as well as the Village Plaza District, which we'll get into a little later. And we've also preserved the balance of mixed uses on the overall site, both horizontal mixed use and vertical mixed use. We've retained the improvements to Broadway, which include the double left turn lane, the widening of the street alongside the perimeter of the project, and the repaving of Dry Creek Road. Additionally, we've preserved the northern boundary park, which runs along the northern perimeter of the site and acts as a buffer between our uses and the neighbors to the north. And we've maintained the vision for the central park, as I articulated earlier, and also have augmented the open space from 20% to 25%. Additionally, we've kept the entry corner feature at Broadway and East Dry Creek, and we've maintained the previous drainage patterns. So I mentioned the view corridors earlier. Here you see they now run east to west across the site. I'd particularly like to highlight the fact that with the central park at the highest point of the site and with the access to 3 view corridors from that point, we've now allowed for the community gathering area to give access to these views to the public and to allow the community to enjoy these views, since obviously you can't have views from every area on the site. We've tried to consolidate these views from a point where they really could be accessed by the majority of the people. Now to highlight some of the improvements and enhancements we've made to the existing plan. The first of these is reduction in heights across Tract 1. With the exception of parcel G, which has remained at the same height as was previously approved, we've reduced the heights by 20 feet or more on every other parcel. Additionally, in response to public feedback and city feedback, we've imposed caps on the multifamily density. I'll get into that in a little more detail further in the presentation, but effectively, we've limited the amount of density that's on parcels F and J and have also eliminated the ability to transfer density from any other parcels to those parcels in particular. Again, we've reconfigured the central park to maximize views, and we've increased the walkability of the site. And by that I mean, again, the fact that we've squared off the streets, which now allows what we think is an easier traverse across the site. You can now see where the central park is, and we now have pathways and boulevard parks that run through the entirety of the site, both through the middle of the site and along the northern perimeter. This squaring off and reconfiguration of the retail and mixed use has again made it much more viable with the visibility from Broadway and the ability to draw in traffic from Broadway, which previously was a little dysfunctional because of the diagonal street, we've now made the retail have a better chance of being populated. And Jim will talk to that in a minute. But really, that was a critical aspect of this amendment, and I think something that we've been able to achieve with these changes. With the reduction in the heights and the density cap, we believe we've been able to reduce the impact to the neighbors to the north. And with the consolidated access along Dry Creek Road as far as ingress, egress into the site, we believe we've reduced the impacts to the neighbors to the south. I'm just going to touch upon the slide for a minute, which is proposed illustrative to be possible under the proposed amendment to the GPDP, and just highlight again both the horizontal and vertical mixed-use nature of the site, starting with in the pink the commercial retail component, moving to parcels H and G, the yellow, which are mixed use, residential over retail or residential over office, potentially medical office, and then transitioning into traditional multifamily, which we think is critical to act as a buffer from the higher intensity commercial uses as you transition into track 2 to the lower density single family residential. Before we get into the detail of the various uses, I just wanted to walk through what our process has been thus far with respect to dialoguing with the city and the public. To date, we've had 2 pre-submittal meetings with the city and 3 formal submittals where we had sit-downs and response and comment, which results have now been incorporated into the plan you see here today. Additionally, we've had a great deal of community outreach, which includes several meetings with adjacent neighborhood organizations that are listed on the slide above, and have also held a public community meeting with flyers that were distributed to all the residents, to the addresses provided by the city for residences within 500 feet of the site. And because we acknowledge that this is a large project, we are holding another community meeting on the 23rd of this month in order to continue our dialogue with the community. So with that, I'm going to turn the mic back to Jim, who will walk you through the retail component of the project.
This is the strength and the weakness of this project, is the Littleton Village. Everyone wants the concept because it really makes this project different than just a standalone development. It integrates not only the community that surrounds this property, but the people that live it, and whether it's the for sale side, the multifamily, or even the outlying community. And why is it the weakest? Because potentially you have tenants that are smaller, they're regional, they may not have the financial strength of other tenants. You're creating a gathering place that you've got to make it vibrant. And this site, the way we've set it up, by putting that small retail out in front of the more traditional retail that's on the east-west axis, allows this the highest degree and chance of success. Because you will get the traffic that comes in, certainly up Broadway on 2nd Street, the main street, but you'll get it coming down Fremont as they make their way to the more traditional type of retail. And you also get it because you've got pads out there in front. But we just do not want to fill this space. You got to fill it with quality tenants, or otherwise you'll just have continual turnover and vacancy. So what we've attempted to do is to increase the success of that Littleton Village in a number of ways. First of all, it's got to survive not on just nighttime traffic, not just on traffic that comes to a restaurant in that location at night, or they kind of walk after work, or maybe a little bit during the weekend. That's important, because the outside community, as well as the community within this whole Littleton Village, will support that during those periods of time. But with the north-south retail, that is going to drive traffic during the daytimes. People are coming there because they want to get groceries, they want to get soft goods, they want to go to the hobby shop. They have everyday needs that they're going to bring multiple trips. And those multiple trips will also help feed the Littleton Village. And the walkability down 2nd Street all the way through to the park and even through to the residential side is vital to the success of the Littleton Village, as well as the mixed use. What we see is creating the Littleton Village where you have multiple entry points off the parking, off B and A where you see the parking, through these passageways for pedestrians. We make it very friendly along 2nd Street to walk that length. And we make it easy for the parking for the retailers that are in these locations, with the parking out in front. But their customers can also come to the Littleton Village and avail themselves of the tenants that are there. So what we'd like to do is try to get good tenants out on these pads. I would think these pads right here would hopefully be a like sit-down restaurant, something which would start the integration of the foot traffic into the rest of the Littleton Village. And I don't have any preconception of the tenants at this point in time, just to try to get a quality tenant in there. This could be a bank pad. This could be, a food user. We have the rights to put a gas station somewhere. Probably that would be a good location. But I'm not trying to say that's exactly what we would put, but what we need is something to drive trips to the center. Here and here would be our anchors. I think those anchors are 45 to 55,000 square feet. I think they would be ideal to get a grocer, because the grocer will want to live off the Fremont there, that traffic, easy to get in. Soft good users in here, and maybe some junior anchors, 12,000 square feet, that in these areas right here. As we move back to this area where we have more of the mixed use, as Jen says, you would expect to have on the first floor maybe some service types, some medical use, something that really services more of the residential that are on site for convenience. I think that that's kind of the general theme that we're going to try to carry through. I think the quality of Main Street is depicted here. You'd like to make sure you've got parking in front, ease of people to come in on a convenience basis, the setbacks so that it's freely walked around, maybe some outdoor dining, trees, benches, clocks, things that just make it more inviting to the public. And we have to capture that. And I think we can. I think on the traditional side, don't don't look at these names and think that's who we've got, because I only picked these because we just put a Dick's and a Nordstrom Rack into one of our centers, and obviously they're a good type of tenant. Ross is a smaller junior anchor type of tenant. Kohl's is a more of an anchor type of tenant. But you got to have that mix for the retail part of it. So that's what we envision and would like to try to make happen with this project. With that, I'll turn it back to Jen. I'll take you through the multifamily.
I'm going to use this illustrative to just highlight again some of the positive changes that we've made to the multifamily component. Principally the height reduction and the density caps. On parcel F, we've reduced the height from 100 feet to 75 feet, and we've capped the multifamily units at 250 units. On J, we've reduced the height from 75 feet to 55 feet and capped the multifamily unit count at 150 units. Again, that was really in response to some of the public feedback and also city comments, and also specifically the neighbors to the north who were looking for a lower density project on J. One thing I, again, want to underscore is that with these caps, what we've eliminated from the prior plan is the ability to transfer additional density from H and G back to J and F. Now, with the reduction in unit count on J and F, we've now created a more viable vertical mixed use potential on H and G because you now up the unit count on those two parcels, which we think will be helpful to help populate those, because previously, if you don't have enough residential units, it's very hard to accomplish that vertical mixed use, particularly in this market, which I think is something that was difficult under the prior plan as well. So we think all of those changes collectively have been very positive, both to the viability of the project as well as also to responding to what we've heard from the community. As far as the location of the multifamily, we've really focused on orienting it towards the Central Park, which includes screening the parking and orienting the lighting towards the park. And you'll see that in some illustratives on the following slide. But again, ensuring that we have various types of residential uses on the site. So the vertical mixed use on H and G, which again would be over the retail and or office or medical office, and then the more traditional multifamily, which is then providing the step down in intensity as you go to the track 2 lower density residential. So these pictures just highlight again the concepts I just described. In the upper left-hand corner, you have a depiction of residential over retail or commercial. In the upper right, you'll see traditional multifamily, which we envision, orienting towards the park, again with the lighting and with the parking, which would be shielded by the units in the interior of the multifamily project. I had mentioned previously the buffer park to the north of the site, so that bottom left picture is an example of what that could look like. Again, that runs along the northern perimeter of the site and acts as a buffer for both light and sound and use between our site and the neighborhood to the north. And then again on the bottom right is just an example of what we envision the Central Park to be like as a community gathering place surrounded by both the multifamily and the mixed use retail and residential. So as I conclude the overview of the multifamily, I'd really like to leave you with this key component of the change to the plan, which was also well described in the staff report, which maintains that as far as the visual impact of the multifamily design, the greater effect on this is the limitation in height, as opposed to differences in density. And as you can see, the densities in the illustrative range from 32 dwelling units per acre to 67 dwelling units per acre. And on our proposed plan, they'll range from 38 to 60, so similar in nature to what's shown above. And as you can see in the illustratives, the heights are all the same. However, the visual impact is also the same despite the range of densities. So really, what we think is a key component in the change to the plan is this reduction in height, which we think will really translate across the multifamily, regardless of what density you're looking at on the various parcels. So I'm now going to turn over the microphone to Charles Buck, who will walk you through our traffic plan.
Good evening. My name is Charles Buck. I'm the traffic consultant for this project with Felsberg, Holt, and Olivig. Our offices are at 6300 South Syracuse Way, and that's in Centennial, Colorado. As has been stated before, the overall impacts of this current proposal, there are the same as the previous proposal. The unit count doesn't change. The square footage doesn't change. So the traffic impacts overall do not change. Some of the things that are similar to the previous proposal are the improvements to Broadway and Dry Creek Road. There are some lane geometric improvements at Fremont and Broadway. Also at Broadway and Dry Creek Road, that intersection will be improved. And there are also improvements to Dry Creek Road itself. One new improvement that was not in the previous proposal is the consolidation of access along Dry Creek Road. The previous plan had 6 accesses, and the current plan has 4. And one of those 4 is strictly service vehicles. So with that cleanup and getting rid of some of the proliferation of access along Dry Creek Road should help with the traffic as well. I'm available for questions if you have any, but that's it in a nutshell. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Gardner Hammond. I was introduced previously. I'm just going to speak for a quick moment on drainage on the site, and I know that's been of interest to the community somewhat as well. The drainage patterns on the site are going to be similar to historic. Part of the site, roughly 15 to 20 acres, drains to the south to Lee Gulch, and the balance of the site all drains to the north to Little's Creek. And that plan is similar to what was approved and was being contemplated in the previous development plan, so that's really unchanged. Again, I can help with any questions regarding drainage or other infrastructure-related questions you might have as we go forward here, but just wanted to address that quickly. Thanks.
So that concludes our presentation. Just to reiterate, we really see our changes, the amendment, as an improvement to the 2006 approval, and these changes were principally made to make a more economically viable project, and we think that with an approval of these changes, we will be able to accomplish that. So with that, we're open to questions.
Thank you. So if the board has any questions for the applicant or for the city, let's go ahead and ask those before we do the public comment. Mark?
Am I going to lead again?
Yeah, you'll lead again.
You're good like that.
You looked at me, so
Everybody else is avoiding you.
You can look this way.
Mark, go ahead.
Question for the applicant. Start there. Applicant. You're elected. Let's see, deliveries to the site. I noticed that, you have a delivery only on Dry Creek. Will deliveries be allowed on the northerly road running east-west, north side of the site?
Is that? Yeah.
Yes.
I believe so, yes.
That's all I need to know.
Okay.
Without giving names, obviously, what is the interest in companies leasing space so far? Or have you started?
We've begun our discussions in that regard, and we have groups that are are in receipt of this plan, and they're doing their site plan or their studies for the various spaces. We're not in any final negotiations
Right.
for the rents, but certainly are in preliminary discussions.
I would just add that we've been a little hesitant being
You need
out
to.
Oh, I'm sorry. We've been a little hesitant being out too fast with the retailers, because until we get an approval, they've been down this road before, and as you know, the depth of the retail market is not very deep. And so the people that we've, I say people like there's a lot of them, there's not a lot of them, but we've told them that we're moving ahead to get this approved, and we will then start to entertain some of their questions and start to get in some deal discussions.
Thank you.
Okay.
Last go around, there was talk about an access to the neighborhood in the northeast corner of the site, getting to the school and adjacent properties. Is that still on the table?
That's currently not in the plan. It's been voiced at some public meetings, but we, at this point, aren't planning on doing that.
Not planning it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Give me a second. Improvements on Dry Creek. There's a divider there towards the western end. Is there any other improvements on Dry Creek that are included?
I may call upon Gardner. You can better speak to these.
Well, Dry Creek does get widened significantly through most of the site, and most of that's widening to the north into the property. I don't think it's 4 lanes consistently. Charles, is it? Okay, it is 4 lanes consistently with some additional.
It's property that's taken from you? Is that?
Yes, correct.
Okay, 4 lanes then?
Yes, overall. And the same is true on Broadway. There will be some right-of-way given to Broadway to widen that.
And your drainage, is that correct? Just one quick question about the drainage. The agreed to patterns of drainage agreed to in 2006, well, even before that with the first go-around with the big box. So you have the same flow towards the north in Littles Creek, and then the same minor flow towards Lee Gulch. Is that correct?
Correct.
And I think it's a 30-inch line heading to the north.
36 at some points, I think, and 30, yes. Yeah.
Okay. I have one question for staff. How are the height limits calculated in J and F? Is it to the midpoint of the a sloping roof, if they have a sloping roof, or is it to the parapet peak?
Hi, I'm Andrea Mimnall of the planning staff. And similar to the first round, the heights will be calculated, including the mechanical equipment on the roof, in this case.
Including?
Including.
Okay. So mechanical equipment at 75 feet, that's it? Okay.
Yes.
That's my questions.
Dave?
Yeah, I guess I got a few questions. In the improvements on Dry Creek and Broadway, it looked like there might be some medians added. You've got some right turn only, right in, right out listed here. Is there going to be some way to, like a median, to prevent people from turning left?
Yes, medians are proposed.
Okay. And then, do you know what the parking ratio is on the commercial portion?
I do not.
I'm sorry, I didn't pick up what you said. 5?
Okay. And then, I just had one more question on the density. There was, just to clarify, there was a limit of 600 units on one of the tracks. Which track was that?
That's track 1.
That's track 1. And then 400 on the on track 2.
Correct.
And you said on track J, there's going to be 150 units, and F, or parcel J, and then parcel F, how many did you say was it?
A maximum of 250.
Okay. So, and then you're proposing possibly to have some residential in the east portion of the commercial space as well?
Correct. So on H and G,
Yeah.
I believe we have the ability to do 186 on each of H and G.
Okay. Would that include the first and second floor? I don't know.
On H, you would do vertical mixed use, so you'd have to have,
In order to get that many units, I mean.
I'm sorry?
In order to get 180 units or whatever that was.
On G, you could do exclusively residential. On H, you would be required to do retail on the ground floor. But if you maximize J and F, you wouldn't be able to do all 186 on both H and G, because otherwise you'll start running up against that cap. And additionally, you also want to be cognizant of the fact that even if you max out the 600 on tract 1, then you're limiting your track 2 to 300 because you have the overall 900 cap.
Okay. All right. Great. Good. Thanks.
I'm just going to move down the line. Andrew.
The backside of H&G, is that a storefront? What's the facade on that? Is that the back of a big box store?
It depends. Again, if it's vertical mixed use, certainly you would have residential facade on all sides. On the ground floor level, there will be some service access coming in through off of East Dry Creek and snaking its way up between, let's see, between here and here. But again, in part of the design, the idea is to provide shielding with the other buildings so that that service area is covered by other buildings.
How much park space was, I guess, gained or lost, I can't tell from the drawing, in the reconfiguration of that central park?
We gain space, is that correct? I don't have the exact numbers in front of me. 1 minute.
I couldn't.
I don't know if that's the right scale.
3.1 versus 3.5.
Okay. And then, thank you. Last questions for staff. Have there been any the Broadway quarter plan is technically not approved or whatever the jargon I'm supposed to say there is, but have there been any fundamental changes to either the comp plan or the Broadway quarter plan as it relates to this project since 2006?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Rena.
Thanks. Most of my questions are to the applicant, I believe. Sorry. So you showed us some examples of density there, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's more or less in the range of what you're also proposing. What I also see here is more or less a height of 4 stories. Mm-hmm. Is that what you're envisioning as well for this project?
F at 75 feet will accommodate up to 4 stories. J, which is limited to 55, will be a 3-story project, particularly because it's capped at the 150 units.
Okay. And on the commercial or the retail space, especially the anchor stores, is there a max size on what one commercial space can be?
The maximum is 96,000 square feet.
What's that?
Maximum of 96,000 square feet could go onto G, but there's nothing about.
Can I have you come up to the microphone because they can't pick you up on the camera?
There could be a maximum 96,000 square foot unit on G, commercial unit, but that's nothing that's depicted there. What? Could do one, but that's not at all what's depicted
For
there.
perspective, what does 96,000 look like to me? What would look like 96,000 to me?
Microphone, please.
Yeah. Okay, can you give me an example of a store that?
96,000 feet, you'd have to get up to your, there's nothing really at 96,000 feet. It really starts to get up to 110, 120, 130,000 to get that size. I'm not aware of anything at 96,000 or even at 90.
A Target, so like, I don't know if you're familiar with Target on County Line Road. What is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I need you to come up to the microphone, please.
Yeah. It really is an in-between square footage. You really have to drop down to get some anchor interest into the 45 to 55,000 square feet.
Okay. Sorry, I think this is a comment for staff. There was a comment made on low-intensity commercial use. I know we don't have a definition for low intensity, but if you can maybe articulate how you would define low intensity. That was part of Land Use Policy 6.
Commercial, right? Low-intensity commercial? Is that office use? And yeah, office and, some retail.
I'm sorry?
It could be office use or some retail.
Okay. And then walkability. So you address walkability and how the north-south, it's just easier to orientate. But it does look very blocked off, and Andrew kind of alluded to this as well. G and H look, like you're closed in. Have you considered any kind of, and especially because of the site views too, any alleys or walkthroughs that cut across that space to give access to that north-south street?
The concept, Christopher Kent with SEM Architects. The concept of walkability is all about putting people at the storefronts and walking along those shop spaces, giving them some type of active use to start to activate that space. And so what we've done with G&H is we've created service courts that are interior. One, it shields and screens all of the loading and the services that are occurring for those retailers, and it also puts all the pedestrians walking at the perimeter of those spaces in those blocks that start to link together to everything. So it creates a much more viable, walkable space where you're not intermingling services and deliveries with those pedestrians walking. So from a safety, welfare standpoint, it's a much better solution from that standpoint.
Okay, 2 more questions, I promise. So the view corridors, and this picture's fine. Okay. So on the north of Central Park and on the south of Central Park, that's another view corridor. But that mixed use in G is 75 feet?
55. It's limited to 55 at that level, correct?
Oh.
Okay.
The view corridor overrides any height. So the view corridor continues from the Boulevard Park all the way down across G, B, H, and A. And so if it's a 75 height limit on G, where that view corridor goes, and I don't think did you have?
That's to your left.
To my left.
There it is.
Right there.
So what you can see is the gray area is the actual view corridor. So in that area, you will be limited to the 55 foot.
Okay.
Even though there's a 75 on G.
Okay. And then the last question is, the parking is across the street from those big anchor stores. Any concern about it? So what I'm picturing is I'm going grocery shopping, I have my kids, I'm crossing the street to get to the grocery store. So how do you manage that, or how have you addressed that?
This is very similar to any we'll call it a larger user, the juniors, anything from 10 to 15,000 square feet. They want to orient with a drive lane. So this lane that runs north-south in front of those boxes is really more of a drive lane than it is a street. So it's very typical of what your traditional retail marketplace would have. We've also, through our last round of comments, we've implemented some procedures that we're going to put into place in that street to help slow traffic, to make it a much more easier crossing for the pedestrians coming out of the stores.
Okay, thank you.
Kurt?
Does the developer own the entire parcel, 1 and 2?
We actually do not own it yet.
Okay.
We have it under contract, and we're scheduled to close on September 13th. So we've been processing these entitlements. We've funded a non-refundable $500,000 deposit, which has allowed us and preserved the option to purchase the property. So we're getting very close to our purchase date. And
Your expectation would be that you would develop Track 2 as well?
oh, absolutely, correct. So our intention is to close and then start the horizontal infrastructure in the first quarter of next year.
You see in Track 2 then that's being strictly residential, single-family residential?
That's correct. So it will stay the same use as was approved under the previous plan.
And at the corner of Broadway and Dry Creek, do you see some monumentation? I'm assuming there's a drainage pond there, and there will be monumentation. Will there be signage there at that point?
It'll be both monumentation and signage, and there's a drainage feature that'll be included as well. Very similar to what was the same plan that was, or the same design that was under the previous plan.
Screened from Broadway, Dry Creek.
I'm sorry?
Screened by landscaping, that sort of thing.
Correct, and there is a grade differential, obviously, as you come up the street. So, but that landscaping will go alongside that.
I don't think I have anything else.
Carrie?
My question's regarding the density in the mixed use in F and J, and we'll just use J as an example. It appears that it's getting less acreage, but more dwellings per unit, yes, yet it's shorter. How are you accomplishing putting more and less, essentially? Are they going to be more like 1 bedrooms versus 2 bedrooms, or does my question make sense?
It does. I mean,
Okay.
part of the reason there's higher density on, for example, parcel J than in the prior plan is that we have consolidated and eliminated I, for example. And so we've consolidated some of the existing parcels, and they now are smaller in size, but have retained a set unit count that therefore has upped the density over the existing plan. However, to your point, the ability to not have it be an imposing structure has been created by the height limitation, also and the density cap. So 150 units expresses itself as a medium density project similar to what you would see at Alta at Aspen Grove. So within those limitations, despite the higher density, it still provides for a viable project, but again, despite the higher density, doesn't come across as something that is larger in scale than what was previously approved.
Can I interject something there? I think, because I worked on the old plan, and I recall, I think J1 and J2 under the old plan had a total of, I think, 100 units together. Yet,
Yeah.
it's kind of funny, but it also had a 75-foot height limit. So, that's very few units for 75-foot height limit. So I think the original plan kind of anticipated getting density transfers from elsewhere on the site. So just
Thank you.
That's helpful. That's all I have.
Okay.
Thank you. LaDonna, you have any questions?
I was wondering about whether or not an economic study was any driver to the plan. Specifically, some of the uses that are proposed of soft goods and grocery. There's other uses, similar uses within a mile, and, other soft good retailers within a mile who have gone out of business. So I'm just wondering what drove the anchor tenant descriptions that you've outlined.
It's a good question. When you do apartments and for sale, you can really look at a market study and you kind of see what the rents are going to be, and you're going to see what the sale prices are going to be. But really, as I said before, the retailers is a very thin market today. So when I said we went out and talked to a few retailers, it was to garner that kind of information. What range would you even consider paying for this? We talked to a lot of brokers. We have a broker community, or a broker on this. And so it was with that information that we did use our economic models to see if it was a reasonable plan and that we could get a reasonable return on it. If you look at the Littleton Village, the smaller ones, we have to have, I think, a minimum of eight tenants in there. Well, normally that would be kind of your inline shops. That's where you get your greater rents. If somebody in the anchor shop's paying $10 a square foot, maybe in the smaller ones they'll pay $20 a square foot. But it's a smaller square footage too. But you get a better return for that. So you got to put them all together to make a successful retail project. So that's why I say it's really integrated. Does that answer your question?
I think so. Thanks.
Okay.
I have a few questions, and then we'll open it up for public comment. And could we see if there's any more sign-ups in the back while I'm asking questions and kind of get that list? You already explained the view corridor. I have a question about parking. On H, on the mixed-use vertical residential retail, where do the people park who would be in H or G? Is there a garage in there?
Yeah, that would be what would be contemplated on G and H, would be to do underground parking or a structure that would support that for the residential. The retail would then be parked on the street, or the commercial uses would be parked on the street or from the adjacent parking lots.
So for the most part, it's surface parking for everything except possibly that mixed use?
That's correct.
On F, are the buildings to the west, is that a garage?
On F, the buildings to the west, that's all garage. What you see in the middle there that's being depicted is what we call wrap. And so the parking structure would be wrapped by the residential product. So the only thing that you'd view from the exterior would be
units,
residential units, but there's actually a structure. It's very similar to what we did at South Glen. The parking structure is wrapped in the middle of Block 2.
Excuse me, were you involved with the Streets of South Glen?
Yeah, I was the project designer for Streets of South Glen.
I have a question about grading.
About grading?
Grading. You can stay there if you want, but...
Good evening. I'm Jamie Overgard with the Lund Partnership, and we're the civil engineer. I'd be happy to answer a question.
I just have one question. On Main Street, I know there's a big hill to overcome there. Are you cutting the site down?
We're going to try to level out the site to balance the site, obviously. Actually, Main Street will be at about a 2 to 4% slope. So it's a gradual slope from Broadway all the way up to the park. And that's quite a long distance, so you do make up quite a bit of grade, actually, when you go up that hill.
So that'll make it more visible from Broadway?
Exactly. And like they said previously, that the park we want to try to make is the high point, because that is the dividing line for the drainage basins.
And as you move south to the corner of Broadway and Dry Creek, does it come back up?
Actually, no. It starts to come back down towards that corner where the big tract is going to be, where you can see the landscaping area. That's going to be a water quality and detention pond in that area. But we will bring it up. It'll be about 15 feet above that intersection corner, that area.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, okay. Two more questions, and then we're opening to the public. I have a question about the Main Street, one for staff and then one for the applicant. Would you say that Littleton Village is similar to, I think it's called 28th at Stapleton, in terms of... Yeah. Come up and say it to the microphone. I guess we're supposed to record everything.
Yes, it would be very similar to 29th Avenue in Stapleton.
In terms of block length and kind of distance?
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. I just wanted to be able to give a visual for some people who've been to Stapleton.
That's exactly
what that feel might be.
That was one of the models that we looked at when we looked at this site, because it has obviously a lower frontage and it's long and narrow. And so 29th Avenue at Stapleton is a very good example of that, where there's not a lot of frontage on Quebec, but the way they pull the retailers in through the main street and then even incorporate the bigger boxes, the grocery store, off to the side is what we've contemplated here as an example. So,
thank you. By turning the main street perpendicular to Broadway, you make it more visible and directly accessible than it would have been diagonal.
That's right. And we also create more visibility to the back, where in the diagonal scheme, you'd actually be cutting off the visibility of everybody on the east side of that diagonal street. So this now creates, like we said, a much more viable retail environment that can thrive and create the synergy that we would want in a mixed-use development.
One more question. The back side of those Littleton Village retail, are they service-oriented, or could a customer come in through the back? You don't know yet, but...
Yeah, we don't know yet, but the way the design guidelines are being written is that these will obviously be 360-degree architecture. Another example of that would be at Lowry. They do have secondary entries. We want to focus the primary entries along 2nd Avenue to create that viable, walkable Main Street environment, but based on different users and how they work, some will accept a secondary entry and some won't. So we provided for that opportunity.
Thank you. Last question.
Excuse me, could I ask the architect one question?
Sure.
At one time, this project, the old Marathon site, was in supposed competition with Streets of South Glen.
I think we see who won.
Yes, slightly. No more than 1 minute comment from you, or my fellow commissioners will kill me, or board members. What mistakes did you make at the Streets of South Glen that you would avoid?
How's this going to be better? That's a loaded question.
1 minute.
In all honesty, from a designer's perspective, was that we weren't able to maximize the density. When we originally planned South Glen was 4 mixed-use blocks. Block 1, 2, 3, and 4 all had residential over retail, and was actually pre-sold, pre-leased for all of it. And the banks wouldn't finance it because it was starting at the downturn, and for sale product was going out, and so we weren't able to do that. Today when I walk out there, I say that would have been a lot better project had we had 4 mixed-use blocks, higher density. It would have been a much more unique environment. And it's a great environment already, trust me. I mean, but if you would have had that kind of density on that site, it just would have added more synergy, more people, more activity, and continued to create the community gathering place that it really created for Centennial.
How many units were contemplated originally, residential units?
We were well over 1,200, I think, on the site. It was around 300 to 400 per block, and we ended up in the 275 just on the one block. So
that's all you have.
That's all we have right now.
275 to 3.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. One last question for staff. I know the street names aren't set. Do we want 2 main streets in Littleton? How do you address the naming of that street?
You know, we went through a preliminary plat on the previous project before, where there actually was street names on there, and we have to go pretty much with the Denver grid, and on several of them, and I think we would probably, Second Avenue right now is what they're proposing.
Oh, you're calling it Second Avenue?
But
Okay.
it wouldn't, I mean, Main Street is used as a concept on that PD plan, just as, a concept, but it's not intended to be the name of the street. We would not do that.
Okay, thank you. All right. So now we're opening up to public comment, and we only have 6, so I'm not going to let you ramble, but I will time it, and I'll flip on the red switch after about 5 minutes. So first we have Paul Rabb. And come to the microphone, state your name and address, please.
Thank you. My name is Paul Robb. I live at 535 West Davies Way. It's just down the hill from the proposed development just off Fremont. I come here in strong support of this development and the amended plan. I look forward to seeing the additional revenue from both sales taxes as well as property taxes. We have 3 sons. I look forward to the additional jobs and services that this development will bring. We've seen with streets at South Plain, and again, it's a wonderful project there. I think this is a much better site. I think this is a premier site in the Denver metro area, and I look forward to having coffee at one of the restaurants looking at the sunset going down over Mount Evans. So I strongly suggest that the Planning Board support this project and the amended plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Aneta Halleck? You come to the microphone, please.
I did
You state your name and address.
My name is Annetta Howlog. I live at 7608 South Pennsylvania Drive in Littleton.
Thank you.
I wasn't planning to ask a question, but now that I'm up here, I will, because I've always been interested in landscape. I live about a block and a half from this place, and I'm currently trying to decide I'm going to sell my house. But what kind of landscaping are you going to have? You're going to have big, tall trees? What are you going to do to create a green environment in this whole development, other than the corner there?
We can let the applicant address that after all the comments.
Okay.
They can address that. Thank you. Carl Miller.
My name is Carl Miller. I live at 650 East Geddes Avenue, so I'm one of the neighbors to the north. I've been very excited about the project. I did have a couple of questions. Do we want to hold off until later, or can I ask a couple of questions?
You can state them, but they'll be addressed after public comment.
So looking at we're backing up to this open space right now, and there's a 6-foot chain link fence, and I'm wondering, with the road going past it, is there going to be a change in the zoning requirements for fencing? I was just trying to figure out, and also with the fencing, is that fencing going to remain in place, or will we have access directly to the buffer zone? Can we get through there, or do we need to drive around? I was curious real quick about the top speed on the northern road. Is that going to be a low speed, low noise? Obviously, I sleep back there, so I'm going to find out if I go to sleep or not. And then finally, with the buffer zone, how much noise reduction is going to, or how much are we going to be able to do to reduce the noise using the planting is what I'm gathering is primary noise reduction. But having said all that, I'm very excited about seeing this grow up. It'll be nice to have just some spaces that are close by that we can get to on foot and enjoy some green space behind us. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. Kimberly Eichen.
I did not plan to address the board, but since you called me to the podium, I will speak. I am a...
State your name and
My
address.
name is Kimberly Aiken. I live at 9696 Promenade Place in Highlands Ranch. I am a lifelong Colorado resident. I attended Littleton Public Schools, and I have watched the Marathon Oil building go up, come down, waiting for something positive to happen, and I do believe that this is positive change for the city of Littleton. And as a Highlands Ranch resident, I look forward to frequenting the business establishments.
Thank you, and we welcome you. John Brackney.
Mr. Chair, honorable members of the Planning Board, John Brackney, President and CEO of the South Metro Denver Chamber. This is where you have the 5-minute comment, if you'd like, to keep me down short. Lifelong resident of unincorporated Arapahoe County, now Centennial. Drive by this place my entire life on the way now to Aspen Grove to shop. This is, I think, what we're missing a little bit from this testimony. Excellent presentation from staff and the applicant is how truly exciting this is. That just vacant parcel for decades is one of the great infills that Littleton has. And when you look at how they've developed this property from the retail that is so needed in Littleton to the bigger box, which is so needed, to the cool element of mixed-use development, tying it all together then with residential that's not up today. This is really exciting for you all. So our staff at the Chamber has reviewed this, our Director of Economic Development, our Director of Public Policy, and myself, and we strongly urge you to accept the recommendations of your staff as well as the applicant. This is a great project.
Thank you. Andy and Dorothy, Lana, you didn't indicate whether you wanted to speak or not. One of you can speak, or both of you can speak. And they're not here. Oh, okay. Are you flipping a coin, or? You don't have to speak if you don't want to. But.
Make something up. Andy Leong, 7477 South Washington Street on the east side of the parcel. I have one question here, and that is, if track 1 is built first, what are the security measures to be put in place so that we don't have ad hoc motocross? And what is the approximate time frame for development of these two tracks? And in my mind, one more comment, and that is you've capped the densities at 600 units for track 1 and 400 for track 2. In my mind, a more equitable and reasonable transition from the existing single-family neighborhood, which is at approximately 4 to 4.5 dwelling units per acre. A better transition would be a much lower density for track 2. And I'm reading the application and a staff report. We're adding up some numbers, and we go as high as 772 units dwelling units per acre in track 1. Why not go ahead and have it? Okay, so that reduces the units in track 2 to 128, which is just fine with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Yes, sir.
Not too long. Dan Parker at 7250 South Pennsylvania Street. This is my third go-around with a change in that property. I I'm one block downstream, and the drainage, I've been following the drainage all the way along, and I'm glad to see that you're going to adhere to the existing drainage that was established in 2006, because that'll keep our streets from being flooded as at all. And the other one problem I have is the access to Broadway. That hill going north on Broadway is quite steep. It crests about where the entrance is now. If we have even the south, just the right turn in and right turn out, down from the crest of that hill, you've got a safety factor involved, because that's going to be the most direct access to the small commercial properties, and so that there's going to be a lot of activity there, and that's going to be unguarded access. There won't be any control of traffic other than right turns, and I'm a little concerned about that, because then if you put all the traffic going in at the north, you go over the crest of the hill, and just less than a block away you've got East Geddes, and you've got a bus stop, and it's only 2 lanes. We make a 3rd lane going right over against the curb to turn right on Geddes now, but that's again a real safety factor when you put in the amount of increase in traffic that we're going to have, with eventually something in the neighborhood of 900 units plus 250,000 square feet of retail space. So I think that these need to be some concerns that we look at and plan on it. Otherwise, I'm excited about the development. I'm glad that we're going to keep those view sheds, because you realize that you've got the only spot in Littleton where you can see all 3 14ers from one site. And you're going to put buildings there and parking lots. So aesthetically, we're going to lose a very important component to the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening, Planning Board. My name is Pam Chadbourne. I live at 5402 South Nevada Street, downtown. My questions relate to what the city knows about the impact this will make on the rest of the city. I already avoid Broadway because of the traffic, and this is going to increase traffic along Broadway. Broadway at rush hour is a parking lot, especially going toward Cayley. One of my problems with the city's process is that we don't figure out the system impact on the whole city. We seem to confine ourselves to the comments about the applicant's plan, but where is the city talking to the rest of us about the impact it's going to make on our lives? And why am I going to drive there if the traffic's going to be jammed up? Nowhere in here is that answered or considered. And then, since I mentioned the word impact, the question about impact fees should be mentioned somewhere, I think. If there are traffic impacts away from this site, what are they? What has the city done to identify them, and what the possible risks are and mitigations? So those are my questions, comments, and I'm sure you can't answer them tonight, but they're a concern I have about our process, and I'd really like to see it addressed and fixed. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Did you already speak? Sir, did you already speak?
Yes, I did. Can I just address her comments real quickly? I live 3 blocks off Broadway. I drive Broadway at least 2 or 3 times every day. Rush hour traffic is nothing on Broadway. I've lived in a number of major cities and minor cities across the country. Broadway is a piece of cake. All this will do with this development is give people a destination, get them off the streets, get them spending money in Littleton instead of Highlands Ranch or Centennial. That's my opinion.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? That concludes the public comment portion. At this time, I'd like to bring the applicant forward to address comments that were made, if you'd like. And I made a few notes if we don't hit them all.
Thank you, everyone, for your comments and statements. I would like to start by inviting Christopher up to just comment on the landscaping plan.
So I think the question was really about what kinds of landscaping, and the answer is really that we're going to have a variety of landscaping. We're going to create a variety of active and passive spaces. And just even in the plan that we've put forth today, you see there's the Northern Boundary Park. It's a different type of park. It's a buffering park. So it's not an active use, it's a passive use. Yes, people can go in there, but it's not meant to have high activity. In terms of the screening, as you can see in the illustrative, it's a fairly dense planting scheme there to help buffer the sounds, the noises, any of the impacts that you may have as a neighbor abutting this street. So those are all being taken into consideration. One of the other things that we've really spent some time looking at in the Northern Boundary Park is at the end of each of those streets running north-south to keep the traffic lights out of your backyard. You can see dense populations of red in there, and those are highly dense tree areas to eliminate the headlights from cars going into your backyard. So we're taking all of that into account as we plan this. We're looking at the northern piece as a buffer and really trying to create that. Is there the opportunity to create some connection there? Yes. We've had multiple discussions. Some people say we don't want any connection. Other people say we do want connection. So we're working through that with the neighborhoods. Continuing on landscape, again, you get into different types of uses. The Central Park piece is obviously an active space. That's where people are going to go, they're going to congregate, they're going to have picnics. There's no playing fields or any of those types of things there. So it's more of an urban park type of environment. It'll allow people to use in a lot of different capacities. We also have the southwest corner, which is the entry monument feature. Again, it's a different landscape treatment there. This is more of an identity piece, something that starts to create the identity for Littleton Village, starts to set the tone for the neighborhood. And then the last piece, well, there's one more piece that we haven't really talked much about since it's in Track 2, but it's the boulevard parks. The boulevards connect through the residential, the lower density single family neighborhood, and connect into the city park. So that's another treatment that we're looking at, a lot like what you see going down Monaco, going down 6th Avenue in Denver, those types of connectors where people can use that boulevard either to run, walk, have a picnic, again, some less active spaces. And then the final piece of that's the streetscape, and the idea is that we've put together a strong streetscape program, not unlike what we did at South Glen, where we have, nice street trees, nice light poles with hanging baskets. We create an amenity zone in there that really lines the streets. One helps to create an atmosphere in there, but it also helps to create a line in the sand, if you will, that helps buffer the pedestrian from the street traffic that's going on in the parking that occurs along there. So there's a lot of different aspects to the landscaping that's being contemplated right now, and we're just really at the conceptual level and getting all those pieces kind of put in at the big picture stage, and then we'll start to refine all the details as we go.
Mr. Chair, there was a question about fencing while you're here.
Yes. Did you want to expand on? You're okay. So as Christopher mentioned, that has come up in several of the community meetings, and there have been opposing views. Some residents want to keep the fence, others want to replace it, other ones want to take it down entirely. So that's a discussion that we're going to continue to have. I think what we'd like to do is see if the community itself could come to a consensus and come to us with a proposal, because it's obviously very difficult to address all the differing desires with respect to how the fence is treated, but we are open to working with the community in meeting their needs.
And what fence are we talking about?
There's a excuse me?
The perimeter fence?
Yeah, there's a chain link fence that runs along the northern boundary, and for many residences that serves as their backyard fence.
Oh, okay.
So,
do you have in the residential area, do you have a perimeter fence detail?
We don't. It's not on the plan. We're still at a higher level design.
Okay.
There was a question on the speed limit on the northern street. I don't believe that has been determined yet, but we don't think it's going to be a low-velocity speed limit. It's not a major thoroughfare. But I can't tell you the speed has been determined at this point. Let's see. We addressed the buffer. Security measures with respect... Oh, is there a question?
You hit the microphone.
Oh, that was... Okay. There was a question on security measures with respect to how we phase the infrastructure and if we develop Tract 1 first. We will be doing all of the infrastructure at once, and that will be starting in the first quarter of next year and will last about 9 months. There's a tremendous amount of demand, particularly on the Tract 2 from the home builders, so I would imagine that will be really one of the areas where you'll be seeing vertical construction happening at the very earliest. With respect to the densities on Tract 2, this amendment only pertains to Tract 1, so we won't be addressing any changes to that. Really, the plan is to maintain what was previously approved there. Let's see.
I think the concern on the vacant parcel or whatever is not being developed is how will you prevent neighborhood kids and others using it as a dirt track? We have security fencing to keep people out.
Sure. Certainly from a liability standpoint, we ourselves are motivated to ensure that the site is patrolled and secured. Mm-hmm. So we'll have 24-hour security on the site as well as part of our construction measures. But this will be a very active construction site, so that's part of the process and part of our plan for completing the horizontal work. The question with respect, was there, let's see. Oh, the comment about aesthetics and maintaining the site as is, you know, as much as there's now the visibility and the views through the site, it's a site that has been fenced off and is private and is not usable. So really, although we will be developing on the site, we are maintaining open space and we are creating areas for the community to enjoy, where previously there really was no access to this. So we think the net benefit of creating additional amenities and access to this space is a positive aspect that we're bringing to this area. I think that's all I had in the notes.
Turn lanes, Jen. You talked about turn right in, right out on Dry Creek. Are you going to have designated right turn lanes and then through lanes on Dry Creek? Is that the anticipation?
Yes, I might ask Charles to address that.
Yes, both the Second Avenue right turn only access and Fremont will have right turn decel lanes northbound. And that's a safety measure to get those right turning vehicles out of the path of through traffic so that they can slow down without impeding.
Along Dry Creek as well, there will be a right turn lane into the development?
Now that I don't know. I know that they are going to add a second westbound lane. I do not know that they are going to add right turn lanes. I don't know if that's part of the agreement with the city or not.
Might be something to look into, Jen, if we can get a right turn lane there.
I'd have to check with the Public Works Department.
So I think that's everything I had in my notes, unless...
There was a question on time frame. I think you said something like 9 months, so June, July next year.
Closer to, I'd say, August, September of next year, completion of the horizontal infrastructure, at which point the vertical construction would begin.
Okay.
So with that, again, I just want to thank everyone for their time and impart upon you how how excited we are about this. I think we're very pleased to have the positive comments here as the testimony to the demand for this product, and I think the excitement in the community for this. And our intention, as I mentioned previously, is to close on the project in September of this year and then immediately commence with our work. So we'd start with pre-development and shovels in the ground at the first of next year. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation, and thank the public for their comments. At this point, I'd like to close the public hearing.
Randy, I have a question for staff. Can I ask a quick question of staff?
Yeah.
Was there, I missed whether or not there were any impact fees? Are there any impact fees?
Well, our current code has a park fee in place and a public facilities fee. That's what our current code has. Right now, the city council is going to be looking at considering new impact fees. They're actually having a study session tomorrow night regarding that. And I believe an ordinance is being taken to them on first reading on the 16th. And so whatever comes of that, whatever fees the council approves with that ordinance will apply to this property.
Okay. Do you have a motion?
I have a motion to approve Resolution 13-05 to approve development of said property.
Second.
We have a motion from Board Member Elrod and a second from Board Member Graham. Discussion.
Why don't you start down there?
Hey.
On a lot of this, I feel like they're the experts. This is what they do. And if reconfiguring this is going to ultimately make this shopping center more successful, then that's what we should do, is reconfigure a more successful outlay.
Yeah, I really don't have any comments. I think that it's a good change to the previous plan that was already approved about 6 years ago. And, it looks like they're on the right track with what they're doing here.
Let's go down the line.
I agree. I think this is a great project. What I would say is, I know it wasn't addressed by this plan, but I'd really like to see the opportunity for this to have the access to the surrounding neighborhoods and across to the west, to the neighborhoods of the west. We have a lot of trails and just the ability to extend or allow the access to the site from a lot of areas in Littleton, not just vehicular access, but more pedestrian and bicycle, et cetera. So I'd really like to see us, maybe in partnership with the city, really look at ways to integrate with the greater Littleton area, not just being closed off.
Kudos to the applicant. That was one of the more professional presentations we've had in this. So kudos to you on a very engaging presentation. Love the family aspect. We'd like to see a lot more with the park, a little more community aspect, some sort of amphitheater, some sort of vibrancy to it. Right now it just seems like a placeholder of good-looking land, and I think we could do something a little more vibrant there, something that we could get some community benefit out of. And then just as an editorial comment, I think 2nd Street is a boring name and would love to see something tied much more into Littleton. If it is indeed going to be Littleton Village, we got lots of history around here, as much as you could do to tie that in to make it feel congruent with what we got today. So appreciate that.
Okay. Well, I'm going to be a little bit longer because this is my 3rd time around with this project. I'm getting tired. If we approve this, please build the thing. Okay. Any rate, pluses of the new plan. The diagonal road to me had looked interesting and sexy way back when. That I realized a few years later that it would have to go because the stores don't align properly with Broadway and not visible from Broadway. So this is an improvement. The diagonal road artificially funneled traffic from East Dry Creek into the development. I also never liked from day one, the roundabout that forced traffic into the development and the diagonal road. I like the fact that it's smaller, but the main street is maintained now in an east-west direction. That could be quite a nice little area. I love the fact that we have the critical mass of housing to, I think, make this project work. That's why I was asking the architect about the streets of South Glen and the lack of any kind of significant housing. I think the same thing, critical error, happened at the old Hamden development. What was the name of that? Got torn down a number of years ago. I'm sorry? Cinderella City, thank you. Let's see. I think the project meets the intent of the comprehensive plan still. It has adequate utilities, drainage, transportation. Then just a couple of editorial comments. I would hope that the architect and the developer would avoid the prevalent cell block 17 style of architecture that happens all the time these days in this type of development. You talk about a variety of colors, material, and detailing, durability, permanency, and authenticity of building materials. I also think you need an authenticity of the architecture to fit in Littleton. We've had developers come here in the past saying, this is our standards, this is the way we do things. And the response that I and other members had in the past was, that's fine, but this is the Littleton way. So we would hope that you would take a trip downtown, take a trip to other nice parts of our city, and tailor your architecture to tie in with Littleton. Also, you should, this is free. Maybe your suits have already told you this, your consultants, but if you emphasize the housing for people wanting to downsize but stay in Littleton, people don't want to take care of half-acre lawns. That's me. We would like to stay in Littleton, and if you tailor your housing to meet that demand, you will sell the product before you can build it or while you are building it. There's an incredible pent-up demand in Littleton for that type of housing. Please, and there's also obviously a need for housing for the younger set, the working set, but a hell of a demand for that downsizing type clientele that still want to stay in Littleton but right now cannot. And that's my comments. Thank you.
Dave.
I guess I have to agree with everyone else. It seems like a good project, and I guess it was a good project back in 2006. I haven't really heard any negative comments, some reservations, but mostly from the staff and the community. It's positive. I would like to see, you talk about the walkability within the site, but I would also like to see something, a more connection to the broader city, the region, not only walkability, maybe bikeability. The Highline Canal Trail is right across the street by the YMCA, I believe, and that's an opportunity to connect to the rest of Littleton and not having reducing the reliance on automobiles, I guess. So that's it.
Madonna, you have any comments?
None from me, thanks.
Okay. I would agree with all the board members. Thank you for your presentation. It was very well done. You brought the whole team. That's good. I think everybody got to speak. I live a stone's throw away, and I've been watching this site for 20 years, and we actually have a piece of the Marathon office memorabilia. When they opened it up for free grab, go in and take your pick from whatever they had in there. So this site has history. People in Littleton worked here, and so I think it's interesting that it's finally possibly going to happen. So any reference to the history of Littleton would be, I think, appreciated. Even if you could figure out a way to throw in a reference to Marathon or something in there. because of the number of workers in our city that haven't used to work there. Marathon Park. We're not saying that. So I just appreciate a well-done plan. So I really have nothing more to say, and I'd like to call the vote. It passes. What?
Leave it on a little bit. He's going to take a picture of it.
Who's taking a picture of it?
The camera guy.
Oh. I don't see a camera.
There was a complaint I heard last time. You didn't have it on up long.
I'll just leave it on. Okay. Thank you very much for your presentation. The next order of business. You want 5 minutes? Yeah, we have been going for a while. We'll take a 5-minute break or recess. 2, 3. There we go.
There you go. How do you turn this off?
I don't like this. Next order of business is general business. The approval of the Planning Board Resolution Number 13-04, recommending denial of a request to rezone property known as 2100 West Littleton Boulevard and 5759 South Bemis Street. So, do we hear from staff?
Oh, okay. Just a sec. Good evening, board members. On June 24th, the Planning Board considered resolution number 1303 that was recommending approval of the Broadstone rezoning, and the board defeated that resolution by 7-0 vote. A motion was then made by the board to forward a recommendation of denial to council, and that motion was passed by a vote of 5-2. The planning board at that time did not direct the city attorney's office to prepare a resolution memorializing the 5-2 vote to recommend denial to council. City Code Section 1012-4B3 requires that the planning board forward a resolution of their recommendation to city council. Therefore, staff has prepared resolution 1304 for the board to consider and take action so that we do meet the city code requirements of forwarding an actual resolution to council. The city attorney's reviewed this attached resolution and has approved it as to form, and staff recommends that the planning board take action on this attached resolution, which forwards a recommendation of denial to the city council.
Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve Planning Board Resolution Number 1304, which forwards a recommendation of denial to City Council.
Second.
Okay, discussion. Do we need any discussion?
I think I want to just clarify something that I just read. So when I looked at this, I had a question for staff on the what we were outlining as the reasoning for denial. So in Section 1, it says, inconsistent with the goals of the policy of the comp plan and the development guidelines of the Littleton Boulevard. The Littleton Corridor Study. So I didn't see that before. So now that I do see it, I'm fine with this. So thank you for that.
Call for the vote. Motion passes. Next item of business is Dennis.
Good evening.
The title's very generic.
Very generic, absolutely.
You can tell us anything.
Whatever.
That was kind of the intent, exactly. Keep it mystery. This is a request for the board to make a recommendation to City Council, recommending approval of a resolution on supporting applying for 2 grants for light rail stations and the studies for those. The 2 applications would be for the Littleton Downtown Light Rail Station and the connecting Littleton Boulevard corridor. The second would be for the Mineral Light Rail Station and the connecting South Santa Fe Drive corridor. Both applications would be for what Dr. Cog is calling next step studies for those areas which have had significant planning already, and this would be the next step toward implementation, additional planning that's been requested. The little bit about this, because you're going to get an awful lot of acronyms as you go through this resolution. You're going to start seeing a lot of them. In case you're not familiar with them, let me take you through some of them quickly. The Denver Regional Council of Governments is Dr. Cog. That's a regional government that you know that channels all federal funds that come through into the region, transportation particularly. The Denver Region Sustainable Communities Initiative is what this program is called, SCI. And this is a partnership between HUD, Department of Transportation, and the Environmental Protection Agency. It's kind of a unique program that's looking at how do we combine these key factors, transportation, housing, and environmental issues, into a single program. It's an ongoing program with the federal government, with these different agencies, starting with the planning and then getting into implementation. And so there's some seed money that's been out for a couple of years looking at how do we do regional planning, and then how do we start doing localized planning for these light rail stations, and then how do we get into implementing. And so the intent is to get to larger funding as we get farther into the implementation stages of the program. There's a 3-year grant that Dr. Cog has for planning right now, which is $4.5 million. The current grant program, the fiscal year 14-15 has $1.985 million in it for planning. What they're trying to do is leverage the $6.7 billion, that has been spent on transportation in the region. They're saying, okay, we've got this money we've been spending on transit. How do we make sure that the land uses are applicable and consistent with that, and really supporting that transit use, making it as efficient as possible? And so they're trying to funnel money through and say, okay, how do we make the improvements that are necessary to go into these areas where we're really trying to channel additional development? And Dr. Cog's Vision 2035, which you may be familiar with, which is the regional plan, talks specifically about how do we channel as much employment and housing into centralized areas, particularly around the transit. Again, so we minimize the need for additional infrastructure, particularly roads, streets, sewer lines, water lines, whatever it might be. Let's make the most use of the infrastructure we've already paid for instead of actually having to add more. And so that's all part of this larger program. There are 5 main funded activities. One of them is this corridor planning activity, and looking at this, and it's a key thing for us. We have started to put together proposals for this. We're in a fortunate position because both our Mineral Light Rail Station and the downtown station have planning that's been going on for years that will give us a leg up. And the Dr. Cog staff and Dr. Cog board have been looking to us to kind of get on board with the planning for this, and this is a real opportunity to do that. We would be looking at a grant for both 14 and 15, probably $75,000 for the first year, for one of the grants, and $125,000 for the second. You could do as much as $200,000 anywhere, a minimum of $75,000 per grant application for each project. The thought they have to be significant projects. They're looking at major planning activities. Because it's funded primarily through the transportation division, they're looking at a transportation base for this, which is fairly easy to get. We also get into urban design, into wayfinding, into the circulation, just in different pedestrians and bicycles. We look at land use. We get to look at zoning and what are the implications for zoning when we look at a greater land use design for both of our 2 light rail stations and the areas around those in the corridors. So it fits really well with what the board has been talking about with the comprehensive plan, where we have these activity areas and activity corridors, and 2 of these specifically are at the Mineral Light Rail Station, the downtown area, and the Littleton Boulevard corridor and South Santa Fe corridor. And so this is a real opportunity for us to get a leg up on that implementation of the comprehensive plan. The deadline for application is July 19th. They just had the webinar on the application last Thursday, so it's a very quick turnaround on getting this out. We are going to go to City Council with your recommendation next week. We'll be there on Tuesday, and then that following Friday, the application is due. So we're hoping City Council will approve the resolution as well, saying, yes, we support this. One of the things they're looking for, of course, is if we're going to give this money, is the community behind it? Is the community supportive? And we certainly can prove that with the comprehensive plan, with the ULI study that was done for the Mineral Light Rail Station, with the downtown plan, with the Littleton Boulevard plan that was done, and then with all the parking studies. And that's the other thing that I did not mention, which is probably going to be the key thing, particularly for downtown, is this will fund parking. So it'll fund the parking study, not parking itself, but parking study, which is something we've been talking about as probably top priority for us for the downtown area. And if we can get funding on that, that would be great. It's a 20% match from the city, and it can be either in cash or in kind. So if we do a $75,000 grant application, that's $15,000. If it's $125,000, it's $25,000 that we'd have to come up with locally. So that would be something, because it's a 2014, 2015 budget or application, we'll be looking at the 2014 budget for the first year on that, for the match. So the discussion actually at City Council would be timely, I think, in terms of, are we going forward with this? We don't have that money in our budget at this point, so it'd have to be a line item for next year, have to be a budget item for next year. We think it is a great opportunity for us, again, that kind of match to average leverage where we're putting our money, because they're projects we were looking at doing anyway. So it seems like a real opportunity to take advantage of that and go forward. We'd also be looking at doing a market study for both areas. They want to make sure that the kind of land uses that these studies are talking about and looking at are realistic. They've had some examples in the past where people probably have proposed things that did not make sense. Just in terms of what the market was. They've looked at these transit opportunities and had visions way beyond what reality was. And so they want to make sure that you really have both a market analysis as well as a marketing plan for the area itself. So we'll do both elements of that. The wayfinding we've talked about fits well, I think, within this. The zoning analysis is a key opportunity. And then the other part that we talk about is an organizational and a financing element to it as well. How do we actually recommend that downtown, for example, get organized? What are the opportunities for that? What are the options? And then what's that talk about in terms of financing for further improvements? Is it all the city? Is it a match with private property owners? What would that be? Are they looking for grants from someplace else? So that's another element that can go into this major planning element. And we're thinking about, and we will decide very quickly here, probably the first year we may do just the station areas themselves, and the second year expanded into the corridors. And I'm not sure that's where we'll end up, but that's kind of what we're thinking at this point. Questions in terms of where we're going and what you think about the...
So the funds are for the studies.
Studies.
And to hire consultants.
Correct. Mm-hmm. So, and again, it's anywhere from $75,000 to $200,000 per application. There's a maximum through this program of $200,000 planning money per area that you're studying. So mineral can have $200,000 total through this program, and you can take it over multiple years. You can take it in a single year. Realistically, most of them have been in the $75,000 to $150,000 range. The studies have been funded already. So there are studies that have been done. There are a lot of communities that actually have done this in the past couple of years. But the timing is great for us to get on board and to do this. So.
What do you think the probability of receiving the funds is, Dennis? Do you think it's pretty good, pretty high probability of
I think it's pretty good just because, again, they've been waiting for us. I think we're in a unique situation. They're looking for lessons learned, and they're also looking for kind of creative studies to be done. We're unique because we're 10 years into the process. Most of the communities that are looking at this don't have their light rail stations yet. They don't have the experience, and so we're unique in terms of being kind of at that cusp of time where most light rail stations really start taking off. They have to mature a little bit. So I think the opportunity is very good for us.
Those dollar amounts, $75,000, $125,000, do you have a general idea of how that would be spent and what the outcome would be from that plan?
Yeah, study? I think a good portion would probably be spent on the parking study is kind of my initial thought. And we'd probably end up, it's going to vary depending on the area. Downtown, much more on the parking. The mineral light rail station is going to be less on that and more on kind of land use and urban design issues, more on management issues in terms of how do we manage that little complex of areas and ownerships so that they coordinate. How do we get connections across mineral to the property on the south end, south side of mineral. So it's going to vary depending on the area.
Do you see this as something that we could roll up into the comp plan or be approved or adopted by planning board?
I don't think so. I think it's more good. My initial thought, at least, is probably going to be just, again, information that will lead to the next implementation element, probably. And I don't think it would be anything that we'd be adopting.
How long to complete one of those studies?
We would have, I'm trying to think, I think it's about 18 months that we would have to complete it, so each one.
And if you get $100,000, you have to spend $100,000, or can you give it back?
You don't have to. You can spend less, I'm sure.
So Dennis, are we stating the amount that we're asking for, or are we saying here are the different types of studies that we want, and then they'll assess the amount?
By the time we do the application, we we will state that. Right now, we're talking about $75,000 and $125,000 for the two studies, and that's really off the top of our heads. They're going to want us to, by the time we get to that application, have gone through and talked to some consulting firms and got a little better sense that this is real. So again, the turnaround on that's pretty fast. But
So you specified that for downtown it's going to be primarily the parking study. I think there has been a lot of discussion around Littleton Boulevard, going from Broadway all the way to Santa Fe. So I do think there's the opportunity to really study that further and give that more weight behind our recommendations we put in the comp plan. And then the Santa Fe, so we're talking about the Santa Fe corridor, which is much bigger than the Mineral Station, and really fantastic opportunity for Littleton. So that to me seems like a very substantial study. We talked about the gateway at Santa Fe, Bowles area as well. So how broad is that piece going to be, and does 125,000 cover that? Or whatever the number is.
It may not. I think initially it's going to be primarily land use, urban design issues, some circulation, but secondary, I would think, to that, and parking certainly less than. And the parking really gets more to that management question, I think, for the mineral area itself in terms of that's how do we manage needing to somehow provide that parking that's now provided on the RTD parking lot as that site redevelops, and trying to encourage that site to redevelop. That has to move somewhere, probably. So it may move south of Mineral. And how do you organize that? What kind of agreements do you need with those property owners? Can you start building a structure on one side and shift it around? So it's that kind of question.
Yeah.
The ULI study, if you haven't seen it, I actually have copies for everybody. It's pretty good analysis. It was done, 2005, 2006. So it's been a while. The other thing I think we have going for us is that study was funded 50-50 RTD and the city.
Which study was that for what?
The Urban Land Institute did
Okay.
a study on the Mineral Light Rail Station.
Mineral Light Rail
And
Station.
looking specifically at the area around it and how do you, and Mark was on board at that point, how do you coordinate those different owners? At that point, Aspen Grove had not been built, and so there's still a potential for maybe incorporating that into a larger design.
The reason I'm asking, Dennis, is this seems like an amazing opportunity for us, for the city as a whole, given how much they're willing to fund, and given the big changes that we want to introduce around Santa Fe, whereas before it was a Santa Fe corridor, now it's really, we're changing that to say it's the river corridor, and it's going to look very different than I think we had, than is currently in plan. So I think there's a lot to be done there, and anything that we can leverage to help support that, I think we should take advantage of.
Good.
I assume your application is going to play up the Urban Land Institute Mineral Station study, which was rather breathtaking, but
yes,
everybody's forgotten about it, it seems.
But I have copies for it.
No, it'd be nice to get copies.
No, I've got copies. I actually brought copies.
For all of us.
I really did. I was thinking a lot of you probably had not had copies of that, so I do have copies.
Then the only other question is, where's all this free money coming from? It's coming from HUD?
3 different agencies. It's HUD, the Federal Department of Transportation, and then the EPA. So it's 3 different departments. And of course it's dependent on Congress funding it every year. It's dependent on ongoing funding. It's been pretty successful so far. And again, they're arguing that this money that has been spent on transit has been largely federal dollars. And so they're saying if you're going to spend that kind of money, we want to make sure that you're getting the biggest bang for the buck on that. So this is a good way to kind of assure that implementation takes place. So it's an ongoing argument. It may not be funded every year, so there may be a delay in there, but it's funded at this point at least. So.
To that end, when is the city on the hook for our portion of the money if the funding gets pulled from a federal site?
We wouldn't be. If it gets pulled from the federal site, there wouldn't be anything at that point. We wouldn't get the money.
When do we write our first check?
When
do we get theirs?
We write our, I believe, we don't know exactly yet. I haven't seen that, what the timing is, but I would think it'd come in with our 2014 budget, so it wouldn't have to be to the first year.
We would have the allocation of funds prior to the implementation of the new budget?
Yes. Okay. Implementation of our budget?
I don't want to see the city of Littleton get caught in a position
where
we
wouldn't
fork over
contract.
$15,000 and they say, oh, sorry, we changed our policy, and you get nothing.
No, we wouldn't contract for that, and we would have an agreement, we have an actual contract with them. They have the funds in place. It's in their bank. So it's not like, it's just future years. This is for 2014, 2015. Is funded, money's in place. It's just beyond that. They don't know if it's going to continue.
So we won't get halfway through and run out of money.
That's correct. We will not do that.
Do you have a motion?
Planning Board recommends City Council approve resolution supporting applying for 2 grants for station area/urban center studies in fiscal year 14-15, funded through the Denver Regional Council of Governments, Dr. Cog Transportation Improvements Program.
Second.
Whoa.
Board Member Graham made the motion. Board Member Elrod seconded. Let's vote. It's approved. That concludes our evening agenda. Close the planning board hearing. Thank you, everybody.